The moment the woman from Child Protective Services sat down at our kitchen table, my mother's face went completely still. Not angry, not shocked, just blank. Like she was already rehearsing how to explain this away. My name is Emily Parker. I was 12 years old the summer my parents decided I was old enough to handle things on my own. They didn't say it like it was a punishment. They said it like it was a compliment. "You're responsible," my mom told me, adjusting her sunglasses in the hallway mirror. "More mature than most kids your age." I remember nodding because that's what I always did when adults praised me for not needing them. What they didn't say was that being responsible meant waking up in a quiet house with no plan, no supervision, and no one checking if I was okay. What they didn't say was that they were leaving. The morning they drove away, my dad hugged me quickly, like he was late for a meeting. My mom kissed the top of my head and smiled. "We'll be back before you know it," she said. "Text if you need anything." Then the front door closed, and the silence moved in. At first, I treated it like a test. Day one felt almost exciting. I made toast. I watched TV louder than I was allowed to. I told myself this was what independence looked like. But independence gets heavy when no one comes home at night. By the second evening, I noticed how empty the house felt. Not just quiet, hollow. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of every sound your own body makes. By the third morning, I realized something else. No one had asked where I was staying. No one had asked who was checking on me. No one had asked if I had enough food. They just assumed. Have you ever noticed how adults say, "You'll be fine," when they don't want to think too hard about what fine actually means? I opened the fridge and stared at shelves that were already half empty. I opened the pantry and counted what was left. Not because I was hungry yet, but because something in my chest told me I should be keeping track. That was when I grabbed a notebook from my backpack. At the top of the first page, I wrote one word: evidence. I didn't know why I wrote it. I just knew it felt important. By the end of the week, my stomach hurt in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. It wasn't sharp pain, it was dull, constant, foggy. I'd never been hungry like that before. Not really. Hungry without a time attached to it. Hungry without knowing when the next meal was supposed to come. I texted my mom once. "Hey, can you call me when you get a chance?" No response. I told myself she was busy, different time zone, bad signal, anything but the obvious. That night, I recorded my first video. I didn't plan it. I just turned my phone camera on and whispered so the house wouldn't feel like it was listening. "Day 6, I said. "I'm still by myself." I panned the camera across the kitchen. The empty counter. The fridge light glowing over space where food should have been. "If someone ever asks," I added. This is what it looked like. My hands were shaking when I stopped recording. I didn't show anyone. Not my friends. Not my teachers. Because admitting I needed help felt like admitting my parents were wrong about me. And I didn't want to be the kid who ruined their image. The knock came on a Tuesday afternoon. 3 sharp taps. Not a delivery. Not a neighbor kid. I froze in the hallway, heart pounding. What would you do if you were 12, alone, and someone unexpected showed up at your door? Pretend you weren't home? Or finally let someone see you? I opened it just enough to look out. The man standing there wore a badge clipped to his belt and a gentle expression that didn't match how fast my heart was racing. "Hi, Emily," he said. "I'm Mr. Reynolds. I work at your school." That was the moment everything shifted. Because adults don't show up unannounced unless something is already wrong. He stepped inside, looked around, and didn't say anything right away. The silence stretched. Then he asked carefully, "Are your parents home?" I shook my head. "Are they nearby?" Another shake. "Emily," he said slowly, "how long have you been alone?" I swallowed. And for the first time, I told the truth out loud. And sitting at that kitchen table later, my notebook open, the word evidence staring back at me, I realized something I'd never understood before. Being quiet doesn't protect you. Being mature doesn't save you. And when no one is watching, that's when choices matter most. If you've ever been told you were strong when what you really needed was support, stay with me. Because what happened next is the reason my parents came home early and why they didn't walk back into the house they thought they left behind. Before that knock on the door, I didn't think of my parents as bad people. Busy, yes. Distracted, definitely. But bad? No. They liked telling people how lucky I was. Emily's so easy, my mom would say at school events. She practically raises herself. Adults smiled when they heard that. Like independence in a child was something to admire, not question. I learned early that being low maintenance earned approval. My parents both worked long hours. That part was true. They came home tired, talked about deadlines, clients, and stress like it was a language I was expected to understand. So I learned to cook simple meals. I learned to do my own laundry. I learned not to interrupt. And every time I handled something alone, they praised me for it. "You're different," my dad liked to say. Not needy. At 12, I thought that was a good thing. Looking back, I can see how the lines blurred. Responsibility turned into expectation. Expectation turned into absence. But when you grow up inside it, it just feels normal. The week they left started like any other. They talked about the trip nonstop, photos they wanted to take, places they wanted to see, how much they needed the break. I sat at the kitchen counter doing homework while they planned restaurants and tours. No one asked where I'd be sleeping. No one asked who'd check on me. When I finally did ask, my mom waved it off. "You'll be fine," she said. "You've got everything you need." I didn't argue. I never did. The first few days alone weren't dramatic. That's the part people don't expect. Neglect doesn't always crash into you. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, one assumption at a time. I ate smaller portions without realizing it. I turned the lights off early to save electricity. I stopped opening the fridge unless I had to. By day 4, I started writing dates in my notebook. Not feelings, facts. No check-in, no call, no groceries delivered. Just information. I tried to keep my routine normal. School, homework, bed. But there were moments, small ones, that scared me more than hunger. Like when I woke up dizzy one morning and realized if something happened, no one would notice right away. Or when I heard a noise outside at night and understood that if I got scared enough to cry, there was no one to hear it. That was when independence stopped feeling empowering. It felt dangerous. Have you ever noticed how kids are taught to protect adults from discomfort? I didn't want to embarrass my parents. I didn't want to make things complicated. I didn't want to be the reason someone asked questions. So I kept quiet. But I kept documenting. By the end of the week, my notebook had become a timeline. Times I'd tried to call. Times messages went unanswered. What was left in the pantry. I didn't write angry sentences. I didn't need to. The truth didn't require adjectives. The day Mr. Reynolds came by, I learned something important. Adults don't always notice what kids hide well, but they do notice patterns. My attendance was fine, but my teachers had flagged something else. I looked tired. I wasn't eating lunch. I'd stopped participating. Small things, enough to ask questions, enough to send someone to my house. When he asked me to sit down at the table, I felt like I was in trouble. That's how trained I was. "I'm not here to punish you," he said gently. "I just need to understand." So I showed him the notebook. I didn't cry. I didn't dramatize. I just let him read. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said the words that changed everything. "Emily, this isn't independence. This is neglect." The word hit harder than hunger ever had. Neglect sounded official, serious, like something adults weren't supposed to ignore. I asked him what would happen next. And that's when he told me about reports, about procedures, about making sure kids were safe, even when parents didn't mean to cause harm. "Intent doesn't erase impact," he said. I wrote that sentence down later. That afternoon, my neighbor came over. She'd noticed the lights on late, the lack of movement, the quiet. She brought groceries. I remember how embarrassed I felt opening the door to her kindness. But I also remember how relieved I was. Someone saw me. By the time Child Protective Services scheduled a visit, I understood something clearly. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about getting anyone in trouble. It was about what happens when adults assume silence means strength. And when the caseworker finally stepped into our kitchen, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning the room, I knew my parents were about to face something they hadn't planned for. Not anger, not yelling, just the truth. Because the hardest thing to argue with isn't emotion, it's evidence. And what they found in that house would follow us all the way to the moment my parents walked back through the door. Once Child Protective Services got involved, time stopped moving normally. Hours stretched. Days blurred. Every sound felt louder than it should have. Ms. Turner, the caseworker, didn't raise her voice when she walked through our house. She didn't accuse. She didn't scold. She observed. And somehow that was worse. She opened the fridge first. Not dramatically, just a quiet pull of the handle. Her eyes moved slowly across the shelves, pausing where food should have been. She wrote something down without looking at me. Then the pantry. Then the calendar on the wall, where my mom had circled the departure date in bright ink and written "trip" with a smiley face. Ms. Turner looked at it longer than anything else. "How long were your parents planning to be away?" she asked. I told her. "Who was supposed to check on you?" I shook my head. "Did anyone stop by before today?" "No." She nodded once, like she was filing that away somewhere important. Have you ever watched an adult realize something can't be undone? It's subtle. Their posture changes. Their voice gets more careful. Ms. Turner didn't say much after that. She made a phone call in the hallway while I sat at the table, hands folded, notebook beside me like a shield. I caught fragments, minor, unsupervised. No designated guardian. Yes, school reported concerns. My stomach twisted, not because I thought I was in trouble, but because I knew my parents were. That evening, I didn't sleep at my house. Ms. Turner explained it gently. "Just for now," she said, "until we sort this out." She called it a temporary placement. She called it precautionary. I called it relief. Mrs. Alvarez, my neighbor, welcomed me like she'd been waiting for the chance. Her house smelled like laundry soap and something warm baking in the oven. She didn't ask why. She just handed me a plate. The first real meal I ate that night made my throat tighten. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't special. It was just there, available, safe. The next morning, my phone lit up. My mom. 3 missed calls, then a text. "Why are people from the school calling me? What did you tell them?" "No, are you okay? No, are you safe?" "Just damage control." I didn't respond. Ms. Turner had already explained that any communication needed to go through her office now. It wasn't punishment. It was protocol. Sometimes, she said, adults react emotionally before they understand the situation. I wrote that down too. By the second day, my parents' trip suddenly shortened. I found out from Ms. Turner, not from them. "They've changed their return flight," she said carefully. "They'll be home sooner than expected." Sooner, not immediately. That told me everything I needed to know. At school, teachers started treating me differently. Kinder, quieter. No one asked questions outright, but I could feel the awareness hovering around me like static. Mr. Reynolds checked in every day, not with pressure, just presence. "How are you holding up? Do you need anything?" Each time I shook my head, but I kept writing. "Have you ever realized you're not invisible anymore?" And felt terrified because of it. That was me, because once people see the truth, they can't unsee it. The case file grew thicker. Screenshots of unanswered messages, notes from teachers, statements from my neighbor, even the grocery receipts Mrs. Alvarez kept, showing what hadn't been in my house before. Ms. Turner called it documentation. I thought of it as a timeline of being ignored. 2 days before my parents returned, Ms. Turner sat me down. "There's going to be a meeting," she said, "at your house, when they arrive." She explained who would be there. Her supervisor, a school representative, and me, if I wanted. "You don't have to," she added quickly. "This can be overwhelming." I thought about hiding, letting adults speak for me, letting my parents spin things the way they always had. Then I thought about the notebook, the videos, The quiet nights. I want to be there, I said. I surprised myself with how steady my voice sounded. The morning they came back, we returned to my house together. Walking in felt strange, like stepping into a place that used to belong to me, but didn't anymore. Ms. Turner placed the folder on the kitchen table. She asked me where I wanted to sit. I chose the chair closest to the door, just in case. She asked one more question before we heard the car pull into the driveway. "Emily," she said, "are you comfortable sharing what you documented?" I looked at my phone. The paused video stared back at me, my own face, tired and smaller than I remembered. "Yes," I said. "I want them to see it. Because here's the thing, no one tells you about telling the truth. Once you decide to stop protecting someone else's version of events, there's no going back." And when the front door finally opened and my parents walked in, laughing, rolling suitcases behind them, they had no idea they were stepping into a room that already knew everything. The room would go silent next. Faces would drain of color. And the story they thought they left behind would be waiting for them, written down, recorded, and impossible to erase. The front door opened like nothing was wrong. That's the part I remember most. My mom walked in first, sunglasses still on her head, rolling her suitcase across the tile like she was coming home from a weekend trip instead of something that had unraveled our lives. My dad followed, phone in hand, mid-sentence about airport delays. Then they saw us. The room went dead silent. They froze in the doorway. My mom's eyes jumped from Ms. Turner to the woman sitting beside her, then to Mr. Reynolds standing near the counter. Finally, they landed on me. I was sitting at the kitchen table, not hiding, not crying, waiting. "What is this?" my mom asked, her voice sharp with confusion. "Why are there people in our house?" Ms. Turner stood calmly. "Mrs. Parker, Mr. Parker, I'm with Child Protective Services. Please have a seat." My dad laughed once, short and forced. "This is ridiculous," he said. "There's been some kind of misunderstanding." That word again, misunderstanding. No one sat down. So Ms. Turner began without waiting. "We received a report that Emily was left unsupervised for an extended period of time without an appointed guardian." My mom's face tightened. "She's 12, she snapped. "Not a baby. She's very mature." I felt something inside me go still. That sentence had always been their shield. Ms. Turner slid a document across the table. "This is the timeline of your travel," she said evenly. "And this is the record of attempted contact." She placed another page down. "These are notes from the school regarding Emily's condition during that period." Another. "And these are statements from a neighbor who provided food when there was none available in the home." My dad's smile vanished. My mom didn't look at the papers. She looked at me. "What did you tell them?" she demanded. For a second, the old instinct flared. Apologize, soften it, make it easier for her. But then I remembered the videos, the nights, the word evidence written in my own handwriting. "I told them what happened," I said. My voice didn't shake. "I told them the truth." My dad stepped forward, palms out. "Let's all calm down," he said. "We trusted her. She knows how to take care of herself." Ms. Turner nodded once. "Trust does not replace supervision," she replied, "especially for a minor." She turned to me. "Emily, are you comfortable sharing what you documented?" The room seemed to shrink. My parents looked at me like they were seeing a stranger. I picked up my phone. "Yes," I said. I pressed play. My voice filled the kitchen. Quieter, younger, recorded days earlier. "Day 4, the video said. "I'm still alone." The camera panned to the fridge, the empty shelves, the light shining on nothing. "If anyone ever asks," past me whispered, "this is what it looked like." My mom stepped back, like the sound had pushed her. "No," she said. "No, that can't be right." But the video kept playing. My dad stared at the floor. My mom's face drained of color. "This isn't fair," she said weakly. "We didn't mean—" Ms. Turner stopped her gently. "Intent does not change impact." She folded her hands. "Based on our findings, this meets the criteria for neglect under state guidelines." The word hung in the air. Neglect. "You can't do this," my mom said, panic creeping into her voice. She's our daughter. Ms. Turner met her gaze calmly. And she is a child who was left without care. Silence settled over the room. Heavy. Final. Then my mom turned back to me, eyes filling with tears. "Emily," she said, "tell them you're okay. Tell them you want to come home." For the first time, she sounded scared. I stood up slowly. "I want to be safe," I said. "I want to be somewhere I'm seen." My dad looked away. My mom's shoulders sagged. Ms. Turner placed one last document on the table. "For now," she said, "Emily will remain in temporary placement. You will be contacted regarding next steps." My parents didn't argue after that. They couldn't. As we walked out, I didn't look back, because behind me was a room full of excuses, and ahead of me was something I'd never felt before: protection. But this wasn't the end, because consequences don't arrive all at once. They unfold, quietly. And what happened next would change the shape of my family forever. The days after that meeting felt unreal, like everything had slowed down except my thoughts. I stayed at Mrs. Alvarez's house while the investigation continued. She didn't treat me like a guest or a problem to manage. She treated me like a kid who deserved routine. Breakfast at the table, dinner at a normal hour, lights off when it was time to sleep. No one praised me for being independent. No one needed to. A week later, there was a hearing. Not dramatic, not loud. Just a small room, a judge, paperwork, and adults choosing their words carefully. My parents sat across from me, quieter than I'd ever seen them. Smaller somehow. Like the confidence they wore so easily before had finally cracked. The judge talked about responsibility, about supervision, about risk. When she asked if I wanted to say anything, my heart raced. But I didn't freeze. "I don't want to disappear again," I said. "I want to be somewhere people notice if I'm not okay." That was all. It was enough. The decision came quickly. Temporary custody remained out of my parents' hands. Visits would be supervised, counseling required, progress monitored. They didn't lose me forever, but they lost control. And for the first time, that difference mattered. My mom cried in the hallway afterward. Not the quiet kind, the kind meant to be seen. My dad stood beside her, saying nothing. I watched from across the room, a strange mix of sadness and relief settling in my chest. I hadn't won. I'd been protected. Life settled into something new. School felt easier when I wasn't pretending everything was fine. Teachers checked in without pity. Friends noticed I laughed more. I kept writing, but not evidence anymore. Just thoughts. Just plans. My parents tried to reach out through letters approved by the court. Long explanations, careful apologies, promises wrapped in better words. Maybe one day those words will turn into change. Maybe not. What I know is this: silence taught them nothing. Truth did. Sometimes I think about that first night alone. The quiet, the fear, the way I tried to be smaller so no one would worry. I wish I could tell that version of me something. You are not strong because you suffer quietly. You are strong because you speak. If you've ever been praised for surviving something you shouldn't have had to survive, I need you to hear this. Being low maintenance is not the same as being cared for. Being mature is not the same as being safe. And telling the truth is not betrayal. It's self-protection. So tell me, if you were 12, left to prove you didn't need anyone, would you keep protecting the people who failed you? Or would you do what I did and let the truth finally do its job? For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible, and that changed everything.